Hi everyone. In the next two videos, we will be discussing the last three Barbara Holland essays, Cats, Buying Things, and Books. This video is covering cats and buying things together. And specifically, I'm looking at these together so that we can discuss how to develop your argument in the solution section of the essay. So after you've fully established your problem making, after you've transitioned out of the problem making and introduced your argument and made your statement of purpose, how are you going to convince your audience that your topic is something that they should enjoy, like, do, something that's necessary, however you're going to frame it. Ultimately, how are you going to defend that topic? And I've mentioned in the previous video that you want to consider, always want to be considering what will be effective for your audience. What is going to move them to enjoy something that, as you know, they don't enjoy or haven't enjoyed before? What is going to move them to think a new way about your topic? You really need to take into consideration objections that they might make at any given time and find your way to move around those. You also just have to find what will best appeal to them, what will best move them emotionally to find pleasure in the topic. So we're going to look at how Holland does that in Cats and Buying Things as a good example of audience-specific or audience-targeted examples to develop her claims and her argument. So um, for each of the three essays, we're going to start by just filling in our worksheets that we've started, the rhetorical approach worksheet and the transition worksheet, and then we'll dive into those arguments that I just mentioned. So let me pull up just give it a second here. Okay. So this is finding your rhetorical approach for the in defense of essay, and now we are down to cats and buying things. Still to be determined as books, but let's look at the approach for cats and buying things. We'll look at these first, and then also the transitions, and then we'll go to the text itself. But in general, the rhetorical approach for cats says this: you don't enjoy and or understand this because it is unpredictable and you prefer something more predictable, but it is worth enjoying. And then specifically, Barbara Holland is essentially saying, you audience don't enjoy and or understand cats because they are unpredictable in their actions and you prefer the predictability of dogs. But the unpredictability of cats and life in general is worth enjoying. So her rhetorical approach adds a layer that we haven't seen so far. And it's not just that people don't understand or enjoy cats itself. They have a very particular thematic reason for not liking them. It has to do with predictability versus unpredictability. In a way, the Cats essay, as we're going to see, almost becomes an argument for a way of life, about living in the state of wonder or full of imagination and being open to unpredictable events and such. And she uses cats as a way to get there. But that's a different approach we've seen so far. Again, you're asking yourself, does my topic fit the rhetorical approach of cats? Does my topic fit the rhetorical approach of travel, getting there? And these are models for you to see what approach works best for you. Buying things. This is a new one altogether that we're going to see. Buying things rhetorical approach says, in general, you do this, but you're doing it the wrong way because of social pressure or development. You should do it this way. More specifically, you audience like to go shopping, but you're shopping the wrong way because you've been pressured to buy trendy merchandise showcased in shopping malls. Instead, you should buy unique things that you truly desire. So, buying things, as we're going to see, takes the approach of redefining, not just even rethinking about a topic that your audience feels a certain way about, literally redefining what they think of it as and can see it as, and counteract that kind of social pressure that has moved people to shopping malls. But we'll get into that as we dig more into buying things. So let's move to the transitions next, just to keep practicing what we've already started. So these are how to structure your rhetorical approach. And here is cats and buying things. Cats begins in a very similar way that cigarettes does. It begins with a transition for some people, and we'll talk about that in its problem-making section shortly. And later on in the second page of the essay, there's a transition that says, if your relationship with the cat. We'll go to those places. I'm just collecting them here for your reference. In buying things, we have two transition paragraphs again. One of them begins with for better or for worse, and the paragraph right after that one says, I don't mean mass-produced goods. So let's see these in action. We're going to go to the text itself. We're going to look at the structure, the rhetorical approach, and then add this layer of how the argument or the solution develops, specifically thinking about the audience. Let's see. I gotta find my way to cats. Okay, here we go. So cats. Let's just touch back on those transitions really quickly, and that will really just lead us into a discussion of problem making and solution. So the first one is here, beginning. For some people, the pet dog is just a bit too, well, predictable. Once you have come to know your dog and the one or two ways in which she differs from thousands or perhaps millions of other dogs, she's unlikely to astonish you. She's the same all the way through, like a banana. The cat is layered, like an artichoke. And so why this is a transition paragraph is that it helps move from what is perceived as a problem, dogs, into a statement of who the cat is. Like, the cat is layered like an artichoke. It's not a direct statement of purpose, and it's not necessarily a direct argument, because it's a metaphor here, but it does introduce this idea of cats being superior, and the rest of the essay is going to jump right into that, specifically in discussion of its fur. That's the first one. The reason, again, that we start with the transition is because Barbara Holland is identifying that she cannot. Isn't that ironic? My cat is meowing in the background as we read the cat's essay. So she has a problem in her own mind, and the problem is that dogs are predictable and that she doesn't necessarily, at least it seems, care for dogs, and that people's love for dogs keeps people from enjoying cats. But what she identifies is that if she's writing to an audience who loves dogs, it doesn't really suit her to go page after page or paragraph after paragraph to talk about the way that dogs are problematic. And the reason is because people feel so emotionally connected to their dog. They love their dog. They love their pets. They swear that dogs are better than cats already. That's why she's writing this essay in the first place, to try to get people to care for or like or enjoy cats better. So in the same way that she's knowing her audience, knowing what the problem is that she sees or that the audience sees, she has to be careful about how to state what the problem is. And that's why she begins with a transition that barely touches on the problem. Dogs are predictable, and then moves out of it very quickly. She doesn't want to offend her audience. She doesn't want her audience to object. Another reason that she knows her audience so well is because if you noticed in the book, the essay right before Cats is an in defense of dogs. So Barbara Holland's not dog bashing here. She doesn't dislike dogs, but she, I think, prefers cats more. And So again, she's not going to go and develop the problem at full length because that doesn't fully make sense for her argument, and her audience will be turned off to it. So that's how we transition out of an unstated problem making into the first layer of the solution. But on the second page of Cats, um, we get another transition, and this is almost like a logical transition, maybe even more like the caption transition that we looked from paragraph to paragraph, because she started her praise for cats, her argument for cats, by talking about their physical nature. And here she begins and transitions into a deeper level of the argument when she says, if your relationship with a cat goes beyond the purely physical, you'll uncover a few more layers under the fur, though being but human, you'll never penetrate clear to the intricate, prickly geometry of the choke and the hidden heart under it. Another reference to the artichoke at the beginning of the essay. So she's transitioning into a deeper defense with another rationale or another logic. And so we're going to call this a transition here. It doesn't move from problem to solution. That's what the first one did. But it moves from the first stage of the solution to a second stage. And it very clearly sounds like a transition to me. So those are our two transitions. You see kind of how the essay is divided, and you understand why the problem making is, again, withheld. One more thing before we move into the solution that I want to talk about with the problem making is let's see, the second and third paragraph. In the second and third paragraph, Barbara Holland is trying to make an argument that cats have superior fur. And to do this, she's comparing it first to dogs. And she says most dogs too are furred, but the product varies in quality, texture, density, and smell. But she barely touches on the problem with dogs. She doesn't want to offend her audience, so she moves on. And then she moves to people very quickly. She says fur is superior to human skin in every cosmetic and practical respect. And then she goes on to talk about sunburn, wrinkles, and all the problems that humans face with their skin. What's interesting is that sounds like problem making. It sounds like comparison, like the trains or the travel getting there. Oh, you don't prefer trains, you prefer planes instead, and here are the problem with planes. It sounds like a comparison, but technically she should be comparing the cat fur to dog fur. But because, again, she knows she can't offend the dog audience, she switches the problem making to briefly compare cat fur to human skin. And then in this second paragraph also she brings up the idea of a child. When she says, on the lap, the cat far outshines a child. So instead of saying on the lap, the cat far outshines a dog, which would be moving too much into the dog argument, she's slightly switching her argument, but we know what she's doing. Really, she is making a comparison to cats and dogs. She's just understanding her audience, understanding how they might object, and developing her problem and solution because of it. So while we're here and we're talking about her focus on the skin, or the fur of cats, we'll start talking about the arguments that she makes and the examples she gives that specifically appeal to her audience, because she wants her audience to like cats. She wants them to find pleasure in them. And so we got to look at what she does and why she does it to make sense of this audience-focused choice or choices. So the first thing is the fact that she knows dog lovers don't really like cats, many of them. Maybe they don't like them for the very reason that she praises them. They are unpredictable. They don't come when you say come. They don't really obey. They kind of do their own thing. And some people don't really like that at all. And so she knows that a lot of her audience has an objection to cats already. They have their own preconceived ideas. If you ask your audience, what do you think about cats? Oh, they're grumpy, they're not nice, they're mean, and they're selfish, and all these things. So knowing this, she just can't make an argument for cats as a whole. So what she does first to get her audience to find that it might be more pleasant than they think is to break down the whole cat, into just its parts. And the part that she focuses on is, of course, the fur. Who doesn't like something that feels good? Something that is like sleeping with a hot water bottle, something that feels great on the lap, something that is just physically pleasant. So she chooses the aspect of cats to appeal to the audience's desire for that pleasant feeling. And so, again, very audience specific, tries to resist uh, objections from her audience that cats' attitude is poor or they don't like how they act. Then we can move on to the deeper argument that she makes about cats and look at how she chooses the example of Jeffrey and why she chooses the example of Jeffrey. Because this is an interesting thing. The rest of the essay pretty much is a focus on Jeffrey after she's talked about the fur. This is how she's trying to convince her audience to like cats. And she chooses Jeffrey. Jeffrey's a very strange cat. And there's one very interesting thing about Jeffrey. And the interesting thing about Jeffrey, how he shrieks and how he claws and how he's overweight and he loves licking water. He likes wet bathtubs, so on and so forth. The one thing that Jeffrey resembles is a dog. Jeffrey is very dog-like, and it's interesting and also very intentional that Barbara Holland chose an example of a cat that's very similar to the way dogs act as a way to get those dog lovers to find pleasure or some sort of enjoyment or to change their mind about cats. So we're going to go on to buying things and see this happening again. But Cats displays this great audience-focused choice making. What is it going to take to emotionally move my audience and convince them that what I'm arguing is true, believable, necessary, pleasurable, so on and so forth. So let's move on to buying things. Okay. We already looked at the rhetorical approach. We talked about the transitions. They are right here at the bottom of 33. And these transitions, like the Knapp's essay, divide the essay in parts. So we start on 32 to the bottom of 33, and it's all problem making. It's the problem with shopping malls. It's the problem with buying merchandise or buying the new trend, so on and so forth. All problem making that you can see. 2 paragraphs of transition in which she states what the purpose of this essay is. The purpose of the essay is to redefine what merchandise is or what things are. She makes a statement of purpose. It's these that we should snatch to our bosoms. And then later, but life is full of one-time offers, which like love we should seize on the spot, we'll be sorry. She uses these 2 proposal claims at the end of each transition paragraph. And then once she's made these proposals, now she's off to explain why we should buy these kind of things and why they matter and why we should seize them. So a nice, neatly divided problem making and solution section that we've already seen. What we see, though, in the transition is the rhetorical approach and how that determines what her argument needs to be in the solution section. The rhetorical approach is, you audience do this, but you do it in the wrong way. You need to do it this way instead. Basically what she's doing is redefining, because her audience just thinks shopping is going to the mall and buying the newest trends, the newest products. She's like, no, 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 no. Shopping is different. I need to redefine that for you. So all throughout the essay, you're going to see claims or sentences like these. I don't mean, I do mean, this is what I mean, by this I mean. She establishes it here first. There is a difference between things and merchandise. And then she starts defining them. So her rhetorical approach, based on her topic, determines how she's going to develop her argument. And it's going to be first through definition claim. Proposal claim that redefines what shopping for things is. Once she does that, though, we see in this essay that she is the most personal of all the essays we've read. She tells the most personal story. There's I the whole time. Whereas in some of the other essays, she's using examples of like Jeffrey or other people. Here, she's talking all about her personal experience. And we again have to ask the question. She's trying to convince her audience to buy things instead of buy merchandise. Why did she tell so much personal story? Why did she tell these stories of her successes and failures in buying things and how it made her feel? And why did she think that was the best way to convince them? So, one answer to that is that they've never bought things before. They have bought merchandise. So she can't put necessarily the example on them. They don't understand it. So she has to put it in personal terms. I do this. I've done this. This is my experience. But more important than that is that in her experience, these examples that she chooses, like the red bird, that was in the golden cage, the quilt that she didn't buy, the towels that she did buy, these examples, they don't necessarily by themselves really impact the audience at all. I'm not going to be moved to go start buying things because of her example of a red bird in the cage. I don't really care for that. Because things are so unique in her definition, it wouldn't make sense to try to make an argument that they need to buy a certain type of things, because then that wouldn't be unique. Then she'd be doing what the merchandisers do. So these examples are very personal to her, and they don't really matter to me as a reader. But I have to determine still, why then is this convincing to me as a reader? Why did she use these personal examples and these random things that she bought to convince me? And the reason is because the story she tells about buying them or not buying them have direct emotional appeals. And so here, she's again thinking of the audience and what will move them. And she thinks that two emotions will convince them that they want to buy things instead of merchandise. The first emotion is a negative one, it's regret. And the second one is, I guess, a positive emotion. It's this feeling of control or rebelliousness or, you know, just splurging on a purchase that feels good. It's almost exhilarating. Like she's doing something bad, but she's really doing something good. So she calls on the audience's ability to feel these things because she thinks that these emotions will move them to say, yes, next time I'm in that situation, I don't want to feel regret. I want to feel the exhilaration of buying something. So she gives us first two examples, the quilt and the bird in the cage. She tells us in these stories that she was considering, she wrestled with the idea of whether she should buy it or not. It was expensive. She wanted it, but she wasn't sure she could afford it. It was too expensive. And then she says that she regretted it. At least you can sleep under a quilt. She bought a different quilt. It was more expensive, not so pretty, and she wanted the original quilt. So she basically shows us that she made a bad decision by not buying the thing that she wanted and shopped for things at that time. She goes on again with the red bird cage. It was too expensive, even at half price. She walked away birdless. And she felt like she missed out on something. And gives us a metaphor. It was like being at the airport when you blow a kiss to a lover you'll never see again, though you didn't know it at the time. What better way to make us feel a sense of regret than making it personal, making it human, making it based on relationship? So her metaphor is really working well for her. After making us feel that sense of regret, then she shows us what happens when you just buy the thing and what you can enjoy so much. She needed towels. Her old towels were scratchy. She saw a pair of towels that she really wanted, and she bought them. She says it made her poor for a while, but She said, in a burst of defiance, I went out and bought the towels of the finest quality. And she says, I was broke, but I felt less poor. So, this idea of defiance and feeling rich in that decision is the emotion she calls us to there. And she ends then the essay with a nice imperative. When the red bird sings to you, when that thing you want to buy sings to you, when that thing calls out to you because it's unique, because it's special to you, just buy it. Otherwise, you'll regret it. Buying it will make you feel both defiant, rich, and exhilarated, and that is a good thing to encounter. So that's her argument. It's not the specific example she chooses, but it's the emotional repeal that the examples in the story allow her to make. And those are what move the audience to saying, yeah, I will buy it. So you're working on moving out of your problem making, moving out of your transition in your statement of purpose, and asking yourself what examples, what claims, what stories, what definitions, what evidence is going to be best to convince my audience that they should do this thing or enjoy this thing that is my topic. So we'll do that one more time with books to give you a sense of how Barbara Holland essays are developing. But for now, the discussion of these two are over. So I will see you soon. Bye.